Okay, gotta get used to the fact that you don't hear anything under there in every stream, you know.
You know.
Getting used to that. You gotta wait till the it comes in. Hey everybody, how are we doing? Welcome again to another episode of The Living Room. You're here on the We Global platform. Don't know where you're watching. You could be watching on Facebook, could be watching on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram, wherever you're watching. Welcome. If you haven't already, follow us, We Global, West Indians Global, on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever you do socials or wherever you network, we're there. So find us and follow us. Welcome to this evening again. If you haven't already, hit share, click, invite 10 friends, 20 friends. We're going out every week into this conversation. We just love to have good old Caribbean conversation. This is the place for good, honest, open Caribbean dialogue. You're here with us, Andre and Philip and Mark in the living room. Welcome. How we doing, fellas?
we just wondering when you can stop.
My mind was going there. I nearly made time there for a bit, yeah.
I see Phil there, so okay.
This is the place. This is going on? Getting better. But good. How things going with you? Hey, Karen.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Splendid job. Yeah, not too bad. Good, man.
You doing good?
Yeah.
How's the week been?
I almost sighed.
We know you, Mr.
Okay.
Sire.
You're working on that.
If you had a calypso name, it would be the Mighty Sire.
Mighty Sire. Actually, I was done by you, Manda.
Hey, I'm Blackton.
You know, I told you I went to do my stuff on curbs.
Curbs.
So went well.
Curbs, yeah, we know what coming, Phil. Hey, Jennifer.
And the rest of the week was pretty tough, man. I spent the rest of the week with the police training for major incidents, which was heavy stuff. Heavy stuff, man.
Heavy stuff. Well,
it was a good week. It was a
That's
good
generally, or is that because the game's coming up, or
man, just generally. Yeah, there's always, you know how it is. There's always something. There's always a threat out there. So
yeah, there's always something out there.
Man.
Ah, cool. Well, me, I'm back on the road running proper now again, man. Hit
Really?
2 or 3 5Ks this week, couple 6 or 7. I back on the road, man. I miss it. I was off for like 6 or 7 months. I didn't run at all. Hey, Faye.
Hey, good evening.
And it's one of those ones, it takes so long to get back at it. You run 1 week and then 2 weeks go by. It's like, oh my gosh. At one point, you're running and you're doing all right. And then it's like, I can't be bothered. The body aching. But now I'm fully in it now. So
that's good.
So all good. Good now.
I thought that you should be getting the AX now, man. You're a man, know that should be,
No, the problem is that I stopped for quite some time. Hey, Betty.
Yeah.
I stopped for quite some time, man.
I better not start then.
Oh, shoot.
No comment. We ain't commenting. You eat your lettuce.
Grow it and eat it.
Yeah, man.
Indeed. Yeah. So that was me, and then I was just watching the news here. But then Phil, I don't know if you follow him, but I know you're a man that like lyrical content. You see, Kendrick Lamar put out an album there, and I like to listen to Kendrick Lamar because he got a way.
Yeah,
he like Chronix.
Yeah.
He like Chronix in a way, so he's got some good content. He rap real fast, so sometimes you gotta listen to a song like 4 or 5 times to figure out what it is that he's saying. And I'm not a big on the American slang.
Well, nice thing with Kendrick,
but it's good stuff.
He's sort of lyrical and melodic at the same time.
Indeed,
he's good.
Indeed. Chesterfield, I agree. He is. Hey, Katie, how you doing? So I was listening to that and just catching up on a few things across the region and that kind of stuff. So that was kind of my week, but it was good.
Yeah, man.
Nice.
I see COVID at home seem to be rearing. Well, I can't even say rearing its head because it hasn't gone anywhere really.
It hasn't gone anywhere. I don't know. I feel
even here as well. I mean, I've run into quite a few people who said, yeah, they had COVID.
I'll be honest. I was walking on the supermarket today and a fella sneezed. Whoa.
But as we say, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Yeah. And then the prayer is that your immune system is either naturally good to fight it off, or you had your vaccine and what have you, and and hopefully you're okay there too. But at this point, I don't think it's a matter of if someone is going to get COVID. I think it's really just a matter of when.
It's just a thing out there now that we live with.
Yeah, it's out there now, and we living with it. And I don't think we have any choice really.
But I think
to live with it.
different parts of the world living with it in different ways, though. Because whilst we living with it, and we broadly seem to be readjusting post peak in the UK. In places like Barbados and the wider Caribbean, people still wear masks, and there still seem to be a lot of conversations that perhaps we wouldn't have at this stage. So it feels as though living with it means different things dependent on where you are in the cycle.
And I think that's understandable. And I think each country and society got to do what's best for them. But I'm of the view now that I think we just got to open back up. I'm not saying you stop the protocols and washing our hands and that kind of stuff. I think we got to continue doing that kind of thing.
Washing hands is always a good thing.
Well, yes, but then there's
for that, right, Phil?
well, this is true too.
I know what you mean, but in the context of where we are, yes.
Yeah, I agree. But you know what I mean? The context of where we are. Yeah. I think we're gonna continue with something, but I think it's time to open back up. And I don't want to use the phrase "get on with it" because obviously a lot of people have been hurt throughout this period, this last couple of years, for various reasons of death, and then the people with long COVID and what have you as well. But I just of that view that is coming sooner rather than later. That we're just gonna have to open up and move, especially in the Caribbean, where we open up for the tourists and everyone to come into the country. So at some point, they're just gonna have to say, we gotta open, especially when the tourism industry, apart from government, is the biggest employer. So in a sense, we already out there. You know what I mean? You're already out there.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. And I think the whole issue around long COVID, which is something that I don't hear many people talking about, but I've encountered a few people who seem to be battling with it, is a real challenge. Because some people just can't seem to shake it, and it just keeping them back. They can't get back into work. They can't get back into a regular lifestyle. And it's really causing them a lot of disruption to their lives. So that is one part of COVID that seems to be, sitting beneath the surface that nobody's really...
That is true.
True.
Yeah, Andre was talking about running earlier. Because last year...
A lot of people can't do that now, boy.
Yeah, there's so many people I know who just can't even walk a couple meters anymore without stopping.
Well, yeah, because...
These are fit people who were... otherwise fit.
It's funny because when I had stopped running, I didn't stop just because. I stopped because a few times I went out running and I really found it really hard to run. No, I was getting negative tests, so I was saying that I had nothing, but I was just really finding it really hard. Whereas before, I was running half marathon, that kind of stuff, not to be dropping anything.
Let me turn the volume a little bit.
Not to be dropping anything. I know half marathon and you, Carbon, that is a far.
No, don't worry with me.
But then I found that there was a time there I was going to run and you get 400 or 500 meters and all of a sudden you feel like, I actually don't feel like I got to you.
I need to stop, yeah.
And then you stop and then I was like, okay, let me give it a couple of weeks. And then you try again and you realize, I'm still feeling the same way though. So then you pause and then before you knock around, it was 8 months later. But now I getting back into it now.
Me and the wife went for a spa a few weeks ago. And we thought one of the things we'll do one of these little fitness things. Because it's got these little things you can try out. I was certain that they was going to have to call the ambulance for me. No kidding.
That what?
I am not even kidding, Phil.
What did you...
I was certain that they're going to have to call the ambulance, man.
Whoa.
Because at one point, working through this workout, man, I was like, yo.
So what was it? Was a circuit involved?
Man, it was one of them ear peddlers and slamming the ball in the ground and you're coming down from 10 to 1 and all.
I thought it was Davina.
It was not... It was what?
Davina.
Actually, do that workout. That's our circuit workout. So
hey, Phil,
so no joke.
Let me tell you something.
That'd be rough.
The wife thought that she was not going to bring me back home. Honestly.
Seriously?
Yeah, man. Yeah. I had to stop and go and sit down, man.
But that was the first time you did it, or that was?
Yeah.
Oh, the first time you can't overdo any first time.
That's hard.
First time.
It was like, yo,
CrossFit. Right, that's what you're talking about.
Go watch my fitness here now, man. Because this year. Your wife is showing me up a little bit.
Okay.
No. That circuit stuff is very hard. I think, but that is extremely difficult.
But I think when people are thinking about getting back into fitness and exercise once they've had COVID, you got to really be very careful in terms of the capacity
Absolutely.
that you can manage, because there's
Yeah.
a real challenge there now that people are starting to grapple with.
Bro, in your head, you could still do everything that you was
Of
doing.
course, I'm still 18.
You understand? So I don't know if y'all know. So I was been thinking of buying some roller skates recently,
Oh
right?
my days.
You get them yet?
Listen, every time I go to hit buy, reality hit in my head and say, "Hey, what you doing? What you doing?"
Yeah, okay, I might fall and put my hip up.
So every time I go to hit buy, I think so. I like.
Ball and socket. That's all you got. Ball
So,
and socket.
so I stopped. So I haven't bought them yet, but I think this week I'm gonna get them. I think this week I'm gonna get them.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think so, man. I think it's time.
Man, go for it. I would love to do some roller skating, actually. It's one of the things that I really, really enjoy.
Yeah, I used to enjoy roller skating quite a lot, but again, my head telling me I could still do it.
We ain't 18 anymore here.
But I somehow I have a feeling that it may
Ball
not work
and
out.
socket. That's all you got to think about. Ball and socket.
Oh, it's okay.
But we will see.
If that feels get into some Nordic walking. You know, the two
Nordic
sticks.
walking.
The two
Oh,
sticks.
you mean what is call it here?
That Nordic walking, I thought that's what it's called.
Nordic, but it's range. What do you call it? It's kind of similar to Nordic walking,
And
but
still with the sticks as well.
they use these sticks, but they call it something. They call it something. I can't remember what they call it. Trail walking or something.
Trail walking, okay.
Or something like that. I think they call it that here. But I don't know. But
That might be
sticks-
us. That might be us in another
No,
couple of years.
Listen, no. I ain't ready for the sticks yet.
Accept your reality, right?
No. Not yet at all. Not yet at all. But let me get into things today.
Fair enough.
So one of the conversations that has been going on across the region, but especially in Trinidad and Tobago and in Barbados, is this issue around how young girls especially are being treated and in many cases abused in the care and in the juvenile penal sectors as well. And we saw Barbados where a couple of girls had absconded and then a whole furor built up around that, but we're going to discuss that a little bit more. And then in Trinidad, a report came out, I think a couple of weeks ago, that, after 5 months of investigation about what was happening in the Children's Authority in Trinidad and happening in some of the care homes or the juvenile homes as well, especially to the young girls. And when I read parts of the report and any media reports swirling around it, I was like, what? And then a few weeks prior, or the week prior, is when the Barbados situation had hit as well, which seemed to be now at the beginning of that investigation. But we're going to get into that as well. And I was like, this is an issue in the region.
Oh, yeah.
And then we talked to a couple of people from different places. We weren't able to get everyone to come in and talk to us today, but there's a real issue there. So we thought, let's talk about it. As we say, guys, we don't do interviews, we have conversations, and this is something I thought we should have a chat about.
Yeah, I have to say, when I push out my message on a Sundays about, what we're talking about, sometimes one or two people will come back and say, yeah, okay, I'll see you guys later on. Man, my phone was a blaze today, man.
Really? Mine too. Mine's still here going now.
Yeah, this is a topic that people seem to be really wanting to get into.
Yeah.
And everybody seemed to have a particular position around it. And it's alarming. So I was quite shocked to see how many people were coming back to me about messages today. But you're right. It is something that we need to really have a conversation around and get a perspective from across the region.
Indeed. So today from Barbados, we have Marsha Hines, and you guys may have known her. She's been in the show before. She's a women's advocate in Barbados. And then we also have Hanif Benjamin, a traumatologist, and he's also had some relationship with the Children's Authority in TNT. But we're going to get into their backstories and background as well in that conversation. But I think it's going to be a pretty interesting conversation. So do us a favor, hit share, tag a few friends, and come into this conversation. As we always say, our audience are also our hosts as well. So come in and join us for this conversation. We're going to bring Hanif and Marsha in right now.
Good evening and welcome.
Right.
Greetings.
How are you doing, Hanif?
I am tired but well. It's a pleasure to be with you and the other colleagues across the region. Thank you so much.
Hey, not a problem at all. Welcome.
You're welcome. And Marsha, welcome back to the living room. You know, you see we changed the mat and things since last you was here.
Greetings. Thanks for having me. Hello to you and your guests.
Excellent. Good to see you, man.
Fantastic.
Listen, as I said, my phone was ablaze when I sent out the topic for today. And I kind of want to start with you actually, because look, you've been in and around women and girls and juveniles and children in care for the last 22 years. And before we get to the specifics of Barbie, let's just kind of set the scene a little bit around your observations and what you've seen so far.
Well, yes, 22 years. Like I said, enough time to be very jaded by a lot of things.
Of course.
The general observations that I would make is that we're still not paying enough attention to the issues of gender-based violence and how they affect the lives of women and children, particularly in Barbados and the Caribbean. I don't want to pretend as though Barbados is unique in this regard. Really, what we are seeing is the relics of the slave beginnings of our society, right? Black women are the lowest rung of the color ladder, the race ladder that makes up a slave society. So you have white men, white women, brown men, brown women, black men, and then black women on the lowest rung. And a lot of how we treat to the bodies of women and black women and girls in the Caribbean remains the same as it was back at the beginning of the construction of Caribbean society. Children as well have been a very interesting, entity in a slave plantation. Their usefulness was really for free labor, and they were always seen as the property of somebody. And so we have taken that over into our own understanding of children and how we understand children. And I think all of these are the things that are pervading, even as we talk about how children are treated in care, but not only in care, in our societies generally. There's still a belief that children should not have rights. And if you give them rights, that's going to spoil them. You know, there are a whole set of relics that are still among us. And those are the base, I think, of a lot of the issues that we're seeing.
Wow.
No,
Interesting. I like the way how you set it up there, because very often going right back to the construction of the modern Caribbean society isn't necessarily where many base the conversation or root the conversation in. But I think when you do that, it already starts to remove certain filters that you might have when you start to look at the society in modern day.
Absolutely. We what has happened, when we got our independence, we did a lot around the political imagination of the Caribbean, right? And my PhD research focused on this. So one of the things that came out of our quest to be independent was actually the University of the West Indies, which is the Caribbean Academy. There's the University of Guyana too. So we did a lot around our political imagination. How would we change it to make us able to rule ourselves as new nations? What we have focused on less is how do we create a society that is fair and just and removed from what we had in the slave. That is still work that we haven't touched. And so until we touch that, until we start to look at social reengineering as important within our societies, these issues will continue to plague us.
Absolutely.
But do you think, Marsha, that there was a sense that by sort of shaping and restructuring the political side of things, that would then impact and change the underlying values and assumptions?
There was a hope.
See, you guys always ask me questions that then cause me to say the wrong thing and get myself.
Now, so you got to say, no.
On here, you could only say the right thing. It's just we. It's just we.
I think because a lot of the framers of our independence project were male, they were interested in the things that interest men.
Interesting.
Hard politics, redistribution of power from white man to black man.
Land ownership.
Ownership is where their imaginations landed.
So empathy was not there.
Exactly. The softer issues that we needed to pay attention to were not particularly relevant.
That is such a
And
good point. Man.
so, yeah,
Fantastic
we,
point.
we,
Okay.
we now have the society that the men of the Caribbean have created.
So let me just check. That's where
Ooh.
you were sorry that we draw out. Seriously?
I don't understand. How is that a wrong thing?
I am trying to be
That is
polite
a
today.
fantastic point.
No, don't be polite. You're in the living room. We talking. But Hanif, I saw you nodding there as Marsha was speaking. I wonder what's your take, even before we get to the specifics of Trinidad as well.
No, the specifics of Trinidad is the specifics of this region. It is not a single Caribbean. We are diaspora, and our lineage have been linked.
True.
To slavery coming down the road.
True,
When you
true,
look
true.
at the names in Trinidad, it is linked to names in Barbados, Green Island,
Very true.
St. Vincent. So everybody have a father, and father have a daughter somewhere, and a son somewhere, and an uncle somewhere.
Up
So
and
we
down
are
the islands.
Yeah, we are properly well linked.
Yep.
And it comes all the way from slavery, as Marsha was saying there. And interestingly enough, she called it soft skills. I don't like the term soft skills because it gives an
Neither do
impression
I,
that
but
we have to be a little softer. I call it critical things that a society needs. And
Critical
somehow,
pillars.
yeah, somehow we have not recognized, even today, that unless and until we pay particular attention to those other things, we are spinning top as a region.
Yeah.
We have not moved as a region.
No.
Our integration is still a fast, carry calm, and all these things. It's still foolishness. It's not what we need to pay. I have to pay too much money to come to Barbados, or the ticket to go to Jamaica is 3 times as much as I would go to Miami. So I'm not coming to Jamaica, right? Because I could go to Miami 3 times. And so everything that we talk about is really starts to fold into this selfish kind of my society, what we need to do. And then we need to look at the things that make money. And coming out from the days, that is all it was about. The land, the money, the businesses, and nobody thought that you need people with the right mind to do the right thing. Because you could make as much money as you want with a fractured society. A society who is reeling from mental health and trauma, we will not move. And so if you notice Trinidad, for example, so much money has passed through the country, and we're not bad, but can we be way ahead than where we are now? And so it always takes me back to, you could have the most beautiful building, the most beautiful infrastructure. If you do not have the right people with the right skills, thinking about the right things, we will not move.
And being listened to as well, because being listened to and being given authority to make necessary changes is very important.
Oh, definitely, that is not a thing. That is not a thing. We are so politically and spiritually and all of these things separated in this region, especially here in Trinidad, that if you don't say the right thing with the right skin color, you can be accused of being this or not being that.
Okay.
If you don't have enough money, your voice is but only so can take you but so far, you see. And so when you look at the real thrust of a society, we have not moved. I mean, this is classic psychology and sociology, criminology and social work. And so there's a big part of our society that is dominant, re-men, re-money, re-power. And that's it. That's it. Everything else takes a back seat. And that is why child development, child abuse, physical abuse, gender-based violence. I'm so sick and tired of having conversation like this.
Sorry, apologies.
It's sad because I will come because I have a responsibility, but I'm really tired because I'm seeing the same thing over and over and over, and nobody cares or two hoots because it doesn't serve their purpose. Children don't vote.
No.
Children do not vote. So why should I pay attention to children? Children do not vote. Children cannot get me into power. The purchasing power of children is minimal. And so children is very, 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 very low on the totem pole. And that is why we are and have children where they are. We sign all the convention, you know, we like to sign convention.
Of course.
All across the region, we love it.
If there's a convention, we there to sign.
Exactly.
Go to New York, everybody golden pen and look real nice. But is our children better off it? Is our societies better off it?
I needed to be in this room with Hanif today. I didn't even
Yeah, man.
realize.
I'm miserable sometimes. I'm miserable.
No, man, that's good. But so let me ask you this then, because I like the way we set this up straight away, because it's very rare that I've heard the conversation around children, the scene set in the way both of you set the scene, as to way how we relate. So does that explain? Let's come to the specifics of Trinidad. But as you say, Hanif, and as we have already understood from talking to some of our friends right across the region, this is something that's pervasive right across the region. Huh?
It's region-wide.
I'm just looking at the current report out of Trinidad, and the same thing for Barbados as well, Marsha, when we get there. So we see a case then where when we look at this report, it was said that a security guard with a background of sexual abuse and indecencies was still hired to be a security guard at one of these homes in Trinidad, according to the report. Let me say that. Is it that our attitudes are so far gone? Because you got me worried in a sense, both of you. Is that our attitudes are so far gone that even with this knowledge, we didn't see an issue, and I say we, the royal we in the Caribbean, to hire this person to quote unquote look after our children?
Well, you see, a couple of things that one must pay attention to, right? How did this guard get employed? And at what point was what known is known? When did it come out?
Yes.
Let me tell you something. Again, it goes back to what I'm saying. We do not care about the infrastructure of children and the protection of children.
Yeah.
In a true sense, and I have made this recommendation having worked in the United States system, where in order for you to work with children, you have to be fingerprinted.
Yeah.
You have to go through a course.
CBR checked.
To show that you have done a state course in terms of child abuse and reporting. I made those recommendations 9 years ago in this country.
Wow.
I said, you cannot have people, all your teachers, every person who work with children should be deposited into one database. Everybody's supposed to be fingerprinted. Everybody should go through the police certificate of character. And everybody should go through a state design course.
Yeah.
And so it means that anybody who wants to get hired in child protection must go through rigorous vetting. But we lazy and we cheap. And we spend money where we don't need to spend it. But we see everything else as problems. And that is where that problem. Now, strangely enough, you didn't pick up on the Joint Select Committee report on teachers. Because right before the children, Justice Judith Jones report came out, in Parliament, they laid a report where they talk about how many teachers are either on suspension or have been suspected of sexual misconduct with children.
Incredible.
Wow.
Incredible.
That was right before.
Oh, I didn't. Okay.
But you see, we are also on 91. So we already forgot that report and we jump on this one and back next week.
But it's all linked, right?
Correct, and that is the point I'm saying. Where is the connectivity in terms of really protecting children? Where is the fingerprinting? Where is the follow-up and follow-through? Many years ago, a man came from somewhere out of Trinidad, a sexual offender registered, and was able to come to Trinidad and get a work in the school system, in a girls' school.
So look, I hear the security guard, but actually that is systemic failure all the way through. And Marsha, I am sure you would have probably seen some of this also in Barbados. And how is it manifesting itself? Because clearly what Hanif has just highlighted there is a systemic failure across the board.
Oh, well, we actually have our very own, who was moved from another part of the government service for impropriety with females. And then, this individual showed up in the girls section of the government industrial school. So it feels very familiar, what Hanif is saying. I happen to be the deputy chair of the government industrial school between 2018 and 2021 when I was fired for whistleblowing about a naked girl that was being housed in a jail cell at the school. And so those systemic failures that you're talking about are really what would have led me to say I have to take the confidence of the public on this issue. If nobody within this system can understand and see how these things are so wrong on so many levels, then I just have to lean on the national consciousness, the national conscience, of Barbados, to be able to say these things are wrong. Now, Hanif talks about working with children. I happen to sit on the anti-Black racism board of the library in Canada where I live. I am not front facing at all. I just sit in a back room and guide policy decisions, so on and so forth. I had to be fingerprinted and provide a police certificate of character to do that work. Okay, because at the end of the day, you are in a space of vulnerability. All kinds of people come to the library, young children, elderly people. Correct. So they are going to protect the citizens, right? And this is, like I said, not a front-facing job. So the question really is the question that Hanif is asking. How do you end up with individuals who are teaching, who are working within secure residential facilities, who are not subjected to any checks? I would go further than Hanif. I think that those kinds of checks should expire. So you get one every 3 years. You get one every 5 years to make sure that the standard is being set high and being maintained high. But at least Trinidad is acting. There are teachers on suspension. At least something is happening. In Barbados, we know the names of these teachers. Even from when we were going to school, guys, we could call the names of these teachers. We knew them.
Very true.
No.
I agree. I agree. I'm with you.
But we know the names of these people, and these people retire as heroes.
True.
Nothing
Fair enough.
happens. And not only do they retire as heroes, they recruit others like them before they retire as heroes. And so I'm so grateful to Hani for broadening the discussion, because another part of our slave mentality that is still very much with us in the Caribbean is we believe that if we go to school and we live in a 3-bedroom bungalow, these things don't happen to we. Class, the element of class, and the better thanness that class brings. So there are a lot of people in the society hearing about the government industrial school, but not caring about it because their children could never end up there.
They can't understand it.
So in broadening the discussion, Hanif makes it a reality that all of us have to interface with. And I had a daughter in Barbados who was in a particular program that was youth focused, and I'm being careful with my language here.
Okay.
And I recognized that there was a male in that program who was grooming her. I could understand that because of my training and my involvement, so on and so forth. This is a program that has upper class children, middle class children, all kinds of children from Barbados. So my daughter has an open space at home. She can come home. She told me certain things, and I sent her back to tell the man, you let him know that your mother is Marcia Nicole Hines, and he should direct the conversations that he's having with you to me. Okay? Message sent and message delivered. She has never been accosted or troubled or whatever by that individual again. Now, how many middle class families and upper class families have the training to pick up that those kind of things are happening? How many middle class and upper class families have children who feel like they have an open enough door to come home and say, mommy, so and so and so is happening? And why I'm raising these questions is so that all of Barbados understands that all children in Barbados are vulnerable, because as Hanif said, we have not done the checks to create safe spaces anywhere in Barbados. So this is not only a poor person that is in the government industrial school issue. This is very much a national and then Caribbean issue.
Yes.
But I was going to say, because I agree with you 100%, because even when you think about things like if you hear a young lady has disappeared, generally we all hear people saying, "Ah man, she must be out there with some man."
She gone for
If it's a
little
young
man.
boy,
Yeah.
you hear like drugs, man. These children
gang.
want thingy.
Yeah, with the gang.
So already from a psychological perspective and a society perspective, we kind of throw away
And we
young
don't
people
even
and young
realize
girls as well. I mean,
we don't
exactly.
even realize how gross that is. Because
Exactly.
you are gonna hear a young girl missing and your first reaction is, oh, she gone for a little man. That says a lot more about you as an adult, man or woman, than it says about that child. Because when I hear a child missing, my first thought is not that she gone for a sexual encounter. So even things like that should be cueing us into the real dysfunction that
Exactly.
masquerades as culture in our societies, doesn't even really get us to pay attention.
You say it masquerades as culture, but
It
is it?
masquerades as culture.
But is it actually
The culture,
the culture that we have, and that's what we need to fix and unpick? You know,
in the
there-
truest sense of the meaning of the word.
yeah. There are actually some problematic assumptions that we are making about behaviors and personalities and sections of society that we really need to address and deal with.
It
think
is a
that's-
part of our culture. It's
Yeah.
historically embedded from the slave experience, like we started by saying. So it has become cultural. But why I'm saying is that it masquerades as culture is because by now we have enough information.
Yeah.
All of us have been to enough school. All of us have come into contact with the international world such that we know that what we are participating in the societies of the Caribbean is no longer acceptable.
It needs to change.
Absolutely.
If I may,
Go ahead. Of
Go ahead,
course.
honey.
because this conversation, you see, I fell up, I come on this one, right? So I just said, I fell up.
You happy you come on this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
In 1997, there is a report. It has been called a sanitized report. Again, examining child abuse and children home and stuff in this country. It's called the Abode Report. And it spoke to the powerful among us having its fill. And so when I heard Marsha speaking about the rich and the poor, I don't know why people think that the children who end up in our system, something is wrong with them. But abuse has no color, it has no name, it has no money,
No
it has
class.
So true.
Abuse happens across the board in the very wealthy, and these things is to shut them out. You know your son is an abuser, you put him on a plane and send him somewhere else to abuse somebody else. You know this one did that, and so the cover up is real, depending on where the money lies. And so this sexual abuse is across the board, and only because a family don't have means, they may end up in a facility, right? But by no means take that to mean that anybody else or nobody else is being abused.
Agreed.
You see, let me tell you something. You see, shame and guilt is a powerful thing. And a mother will know damn well that her daughter is being abused and leave that child getting abused because what you going to say about your uncle.
The shame is
What
worse.
you gonna say about this one? About what they going to think about we family.
You can't bring down the family. Yeah.
And I have had multiple situations where that is, and you coming to me that no, we ain't gonna do that. And so abuse happen across the board. And I wanted to touch on the whole culture thing because I have said for a very long time, the word culture has now given me a bad taste in my mouth. I cannot stand the word culture in the context of the Caribbean because for me, culture is steel pan, dance, limbo, and them kind of thing. The foolishness, but you want to rape children and abuse people under the guise of its culture. There was a story in Trinidad a couple of years ago where a father said he had to take his case. I don't need to explain what that means.
Wow.
That is that culture in we family. That's our culture. We had in our country, we had to fight in parliament. Imagine this daughter. We had to fight in parliament to change the Sexual Offences Act to ensure that children are no longer able to be married.
Married.
That's supposed to be a 1 hour sitting. That speak of the house, welcome everybody, and say a prayer. The person stand up and read. We would like to change this in law, and everybody said, all right, don't you better go to
It should have been.
days of debate to tell me that we can marry no 9 and 10-year-old hardback man married children.
What?
The guys of
That's
religion
incredible.
and culture.
How recent was that debate?
That was passed in 2020.
Yeah.
2020.
My word.
But in other Caribbean, it is still properly well enshrined. I thank God that this Attorney General, well, then had the foresight under rigorous agitation to at least bring this to the Parliament. But the point is, imagine you had to convince people that there can be no culture or religion could tell me that a 40-year-old man could marry a 9-year-old child. I can't see that know-how. Foolishness. And the other thing I wanted to touch on...
But before you go pass over that, Hanif, though, what was the reaction from the public?
Oh, that is why it was passed. The public was bitter. Because it had to pass. The only reason why that passed is because of public pressure.
Okay, but that's a good thing.
Even in the public, there were some dissenters because it's religion. And you listen, too many of the issues that face our children are guised under the rubric of religion. Or you're beating children because I am against corporate punishment. All the Bible says, the Bible
Spare the rod.
Bible, one of the worst vengeance I heard in that Bible, I quote it, but somebody can probably pull it up, your researcher, that speak about if you hurt a child, you will be getting the wrath of God. Right? That is what I know, but we don't talk about that one. I have said that this is not a religious or political argument. This is about the rights of a child. And just because you want to march up and down and go and protest when your rights are infringed, what about the child's rights?
But you see,
who is protecting the child's rights? Somebody's reminding me that it was in
2017.
That it was passed. That person is correct. It was in 2017. Yeah. It passed. There were some other amendments in 2020, which I think was the sexual offenses. The how they call that thing where you could now, after you come out of jail, you would be put on an offenders registry.
A register.
The registry was in 2020. And the 2017 was that part of the bill, right? So we have made great strides. I ain't gonna lie, we have made great strides. But I wanted to put that in the context of why we are failing.
Okay.
So you work hard, and I must admit that they worked hard. They did a lot for child and child protection, but they have not understood it yet, that child protection is a system and not a person. Child protection is a system and not an authority. Child protection is a system, and a system that has moving parts.
Yep.
And if you do not understand that child protection is a system, we will fail.
Yeah.
Because no one person, no one company, no one entity can protect a child. What about the school, the church, the police, the army, the family fabric? You understand? Everybody makes up child protection. And until we have somebody who can synergize that in a real way, understanding social work, social services, then all we're doing is creating beautiful pieces of things in beautiful corners of a country, and none shall meet.
Too much isolation and disparity. There's no cohesion. So,
agreed.
I mean, it's scary. So scary to hear that put in that way. And Marsha, Trinidad song is though they're so far down the line compared to Barbados, for example. But the theme of power, and I don't want to discount power from this conversation, because a lot of times, whether we want to accept it or not, my experience, particularly living here in the United Kingdom, I often shudder when I think about young people who grew up here in the 80s because of what was happening with those in power as it relates to children. And a lot of times we don't look at that as a part of the reality of why we have the disconnect, because those in power don't want to change the system because perhaps it suits and favors them.
Well, I mean, this is as bad as Trinidad is. I am going to reiterate that they are at least changing laws. They're at least updating laws. They're at least if even if the culture is not in line with the law, at least the law is on the book. In Barbados, the laws that govern juvenile justice and reform of children date back from 1926 and 1932, respectively.
Yeah.
Okay, the institution in which we house them is proud to announce that it was formed in 1872.
Wow.
And it is still run like it is operating in 1872. So if you create a spectrum, right, Trinidad is on the end towards progressive, at least as bad as they are, and Barbados is on the other end of that spectrum, right? That is really so we contextualize and understand how at risk and vulnerable the children of Barbados are.
Yeah.
The history is replete with examples of how children have been manipulated in Barbados by the powerful.
Yes.
There is a commonly told story that remains in the oral history of Barbados, and it is disappointing. And I've flirted with the idea of bringing it out of the oral history of a popular politician, very well liked. When we think of this person, we think of legacy alone, good legacy alone. But there are stories that women in around the area where he was the kingpin of what they used to have to do to get access to the stuff that he used to dole out. So we're talking breakfasts for children, we are talking school uniforms for children, we are talking food for households that didn't have that and that kind of thing. And so there is a way in which the silence in Barbados around these issues is embedded, entrenched, and reinforced. You can't believe these light girls. You can't believe these light boys.
Is that the attitude,
right?
man? Yeah.
The attitude, and it is it is protecting people historically, but it is also protecting current members of parliament, current attorneys, current police officers, current probation officers, current people of power who have also dipped their hands into the cookie jar.
Wow.
And this is the real difficulty behind why we cannot get the political will.
Yeah.
Because you are asking the people who have done the most damage to admit that and to then change the system such that people after them can't do the same kind of damage. That is really why we can't get movement on the issue of vulnerable girls especially, but vulnerable children generally.
And very often they're protecting each other, right? And protecting the quote unquote legacy of their party members and status quo and business affiliates and party donors and all this kind of stuff. Very often that's the case that continues to perpetuate that. Do you think, in everything that we just said there now, and just looking at these specifics in Barbados a little bit again, 2 weeks or so prior to the whole issue of the young ladies absconding, which is what kind of is the trigger point, so to speak, to what got us to this point of actually getting an investigation. But 2 weeks prior to that, again, another investigation for 6 weeks, and I don't know what 6 weeks going to yield either. But let me think that. But 2 weeks prior to that, the minister in charge said that there was nothing wrong.
There was nothing wrong. We just came out of an investigation. Right? So this is an investigation behind the investigation. I think it's important to understand that. Last year, when a naked 14-year-old child was found to be sleeping on the floor of a cell, not on a bed, on the floor of the cell, relieving herself, her bodily functions on the cement, and then being forced to clean it up herself. The minister investigated that and found that there was nothing wrong.
Wow.
The police.
But he says so
reached out to me.
publicly. That's the thing.
He said so publicly.
How he's still in a job
said
is
so
beyond me, to be honest.
Wow.
Well, this is how power operates. This is when you talk about political power, and the most unchecked political power you have anywhere in the world is in that beast called the Prime Minister in the Caribbean. You see a Prime Minister in the Caribbean, that is even more powerful than a president. That is next to God.
True, very true.
And that too is a relic of how our society
Constructed.
was formed,
Yep.
and how we moved power from massa into that black stronghold leader that we had in the 50s and 60s that could do no wrong. And the stories of abuse of children and vulnerable people come all through from them too. Let's be clear about that, right?
Okay.
But this investigation comes up, nothing is found in the investigation.
Yeah.
I have an email that I'm holding on to, well
dear.
backed up, right? When the
Send it to
police
me. Let me
asked
keep it for you
to
as
be
well.
involved in that investigation.
Wow.
And I said, yes, sure, I would be happy to be involved. They said somebody would reach out to me to do the interview, and I still waiting. It's a good thing I didn't hold my breath.
Did the first investigation?
The first investigation. So my question is, how you can only find an investigation what you look for.
Yes.
Let me make it clear that one of the first red flags that I saw in the girls section of the government industrial school on my first visit there as the deputy chair is that there's not a single working camera in the entire facility.
Oh.
So that brings everything down to a he say, she say, them say situation.
Red flag.
Okay? Girl after girl after girl is recounting experience of abuse after experience of abuse, and the minister farms his mouth in public to say there is no evidence. Well, it's only obvious that there is no evidence because the government is complicit in making sure that there is no evidence.
Yeah.
If they had put in the camera system when I asked them to, back in 2018 when I took over the deputy chairmanship, we would have enough evidence. But even if they didn't do it then, and they did it last year at the point where the naked child was found, we would have evidence about these two that we have now criminalized for running for their lives.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because
So
I
my
noticed
question
the thing, the narrative changing on these two young ladies. Now, initially everybody was ha. Now all of a sudden, as time goes on, now they're calling these two young ladies all kinds of names
Yeah.
in the media.
And my question really is, if you still don't have the cameras, you're still not going to interview the individuals who are alleging the abuse and believe them. Not just interview them, but believe them. What do you think will be different about the report that's coming out in 6 weeks' time?
Nothing. If you're ready for an answer, because when I heard that whole thing about 6 weeks, what I said, I laughed to myself, but I didn't laugh because the issue was something laughable. I actually thought to myself, well, this is so complex. There is so much to try and get under. What could you realistically decide, find out, take action on in 6 weeks? You're looking at,
And the
if you can finish in
investigative
6
team-
weeks, you can't be asking the right questions.
No.
And the investigative team is a creature of the minister. So they gotta be careful that they don't get fired like me.
Oh my word.
Right? So let us also understand that this is not an independent investigation. These individuals will be responsible. They were first chosen by the minister. Okay, and we know how politics in the Caribbean runs. A minister's vision in the public is protected at all costs. So he gets to handpick this committee. He gets to appoint them under the conditions only known to him and them. So again, I ask, what exactly do we expect to come out of the investigation?
Interesting though, Honey, when it looks at the report in Trinidad, how was the investigative team chosen?
I do not know. I did not see a criteria, and one of the things that Marsha said that I definitely agree with is the level of power in the Caribbean, in the political arena. And so I appoint who I want to appoint. There is absolutely no justification. And even if I ask how, There is no response to say, well, these are the people, this is what I did. Because even when the people were appointed here, there were persons who voiced a serious concern for a number of the people who were on the committee. For reasons for reasons of history, where the persons sat before, what were the roles before, but they were on this committee. So I am thinking that they have the total power to appoint whomever they want on whatever committee for however long. But let me tell you something. I honestly believe that until and unless we understand child abuse and child protection, all of these committees, all of these investigations, while I welcome them because hopefully they will give something, it's just a farce. It is to say that we have done something.
Done it.
And so when I hear investigations and 6 weeks and we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that, it moves, right? And unfortunately, like in my situation here in Trinidad, 90% of the recommendations made were recommendations that I made and or was already in train. So there's absolutely nothing new, right? And so, but we're gonna make it a big thing now. You understand? Because we need to get the mileage from it. And so it frustrates people like myself and other persons who actually know what they're about and willing to, because then we keep dancing. And unfortunately, when we hurt children and family, we are the ones who have to come now and try to fix it. You see? And so when we talk a short while ago about these laws that is changing, you know, Marsha, you were saying at least we changing laws and all that is all well and good. A law has two purposes and two purposes only. And it's either to protect or to change a behavior. A law is designed to either protect somebody or some interest group or some population or to change a behavior. And if you don't want to change your behavior willingly, we're going to put a law that forces, so we'll charge you, we will fine you. So that's number one when we look at laws. But number two, when we look at laws in this arena, it is meant to build a system around child protection. So it means that there must be an amalgamation of all the pieces of legislation in relation to children, and the law must meet practice. We are in a Caribbean where we pull pieces of legislation from all over the world. And we turn it into our legislation. But the reality is whether that law can fit what is on the ground. And so now here what happens. You create this law, and then you create these creatures of the law and say, go and do what you need to do. But you don't give me the results to go. You don't give me the skill set to go. You don't give me the training and development to go. And the final one, you don't give me the teeth to go.
The teeth, the teeth is important.
So you give me everything else. So we have a lot. We have the commission of this. We have the commission of that. We have the ombudsman. These people can't do nothing. The law,
very true.
These people cannot do anything. The Children Authority, as much as you can tell a home to shut down, if the home say, listen here, wherever, you can't go with no police and say, we have given you an order to shut and we are here to put a chain on the door. We can't do that. You have the police complaints authority as powerful. All they can do is gather the information and take it to the DPP. Mr. West and the police complaints can't charge police, can't discipline police, they can recommend. You have the ombudsman, like there's nothing that anybody could, there's no teeth.
But that's true right across the region on any and everything, though. Not even I mean, we're talking about this issue specifically, but that's a complaint right across the region that all these committees and all these kind of institutionalized positions like the ombudsman and what have you, you know, they really can't do anything. You know, so we need to get to a point where these guys have some teeth.
And it is an important in the context of the point that Hanif just made to note that the Prime Minister of Barbados has never once spoken or offered an opinion or a position on the government industrial school since this thing broke last year, March. never once. And this is a prime minister who fights very hard to be seen as a progressive female leader.
Let me get real. This is a prime minister who had an opinion on people having an opinion on her or hiring a radio broadcaster for a position and actually came up with a statement on it. Let me be honest here about how low in priority we talking here.
Absolutely.
You know,
That is
because
very problematic and offensive for me.
It
really
is. But you see, when I was preparing for this show, I thought to myself, hang on, the Barbados Labour Party prepared a youth manifesto back in 2018, right? So I decided to go and have a look back to see, all right, let me see what was said around this topic. Nothing. There is nothing around this topic at all. But this is perhaps one of the most fundamental issues troubling our young people. But when you look back, and if you try to kind of, it's like what you were saying in the beginning, you know, youth don't vote, but you can make it look attractive to the people for whom youth are important. But there was nothing there. So on the one hand, you almost wanted to say youth are important, but picking the wrong priorities.
And I just want to say as well, Hanif is cutting at a point there that I think is important to spend just 30 quick seconds to elaborate.
Go ahead, man.
A lot of the girls who come into the care of the government industrial school are actually put there after having experienced some kind of abuse, and it is usually sexual abuse. So they come from family environments where something may have happened, right? And I don't just mean broken in the context of how people think a single mother family. No, that's not.
No,
that's
I mean
not
they
broken.
come broken based on an experience.
They come broken, exactly,
Yes,
based
that's what I
on,
mean.
on what they have experienced. Some of the most
yeah.
horrific stories that you have ever heard of abuse that children have experienced, right? This child might decide, okay, I really can't manage this anymore. Or in some cases, it is the emotional and mental fallout of the untreated trauma. And they start to leave the home environment, right? And for that, they are picked up by the police and charged with this very strange offense called wandering. And then they are investigated by the police for wandering. And a part of that investigation includes being cavity searched. Okay, I don't know why they cavity searched them, but a part of it includes being cavity searched in the process of the investigation.
What you mean if you're wondering?
Yes,
would that make sense?
All girls in Barbados, and I'm saying girls because boys apparently don't wander. Only girls do it, right? And in the process of investigating the crime, the police will take these children to either the police doctor or the accident and emergency department at the hospital, and a cavity search is performed as a part of the investigation. Wow. Okay? The girls
with
are
no ward or adult present, or
the parents do not consent. The police are saying no. Now that one of the questions that has come up in the whole all of what is going on here, the police are now saying they get the power to do it from the court. I have never really heard about the police getting the power from the court, but wherever the power is coming from, it is offensive, horrible power. Because really and truly, what is the cavity search for, right? And the girls are also given birth control. So it's mandatory birth control. So they don't again have a choice, and whether they take that or not, they are given.
And there's so many things wrong with that.
But I don't understand the logic in there, though.
So when we talk about child abuse, let us be clear and understand that there are very few children that come into the juvenile justice system that have a perfectly pure dandelion laced childhood. We create these children and then turn around as a society and punish them. Yeah. So that is one. The other thing that girls wander for is what we have all done, just that some of us get caught and some of us don't. Children will explore their sexuality, right? Teenage children will explore their sexuality. How would we know what to do as 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds if you don't start somewhere? We all do it. But for a certain class of girls, when they start to explore that sexuality, it is more public. It is perhaps a more public space, right? Yeah. Daddy doesn't have a cottage up by the lake. Mommy doesn't have a 4-bedroom house where you could hide off and do what you're doing. So it is more public. And because it is more public, they get labeled, right? And then they get punished. So that is just as problematic as the ones who go into the system because of abuse, right? It is okay in Barbados for a big grown man to molest a girl. Nothing happens to him. Because we know that these cases going through the court 18 years, 20 years, 22 years, and people accused of rape are of children. The children are big women in court, which is a part of the problem we have, because when they're giving the testimony, the court is seeing a hardback woman.
And this happened 20 years ago.
Exactly. Instead of the 11 or 10-year-old child that it happened to. Right? Nothing. It is better in Barbados to rape a whole child. Your niece, a church member, your child, if you're a father, because we also have that understanding in Barbados that the father is to take the first piece of whatever, right? So it is easier and better for you to rape a child in Barbados than it is for you as a child to sneak out with your little 14-year-old boyfriend to explore your sexuality. Wow. These are the issues that we are talking about.
I'll be honest, some of the stuff we're talking in here, some of it I don't even know how to respond to.
We don't often get stunned into silence
in my head, to be honest with you. And people would tell you I talk a lot, but y'all, and even you and Marsha kind of stunning me into silence about the situation that's happening across the region, actually. Because I say across the region, because obviously guys in the audience, I know we have Honey from Trinidad and Marsha from Barbados, but as we established at the beginning, this is happening right across the region.
Region-wide.
Let me tell you, you see trauma, and my profession as a traumatologist.
I was going to come to that. Go ahead.
And examine trauma, and you're quite right. We have people who are traumatized, and I say poverty is the greatest trauma of all. Right? Poverty is the greatest, because out of poverty, so many other ills finds its way, including sexual and physical and emotional abuse. Mommy had to go and work long hours, child had to stay alone, or uncle or auntie or friend or neighbor. Abuse. Right? This man or this woman provided money and stuff, so what we gonna do? This one is a prominent person, we can't really talk, so you know what? Abuse. So poverty, in my view, is one of the greatest trauma of all time. And we are not dealing with fixing poverty. There's nothing in any Caribbean country that I have seen where a sustained program to fix poverty. I mean, we have the Millennium Goals, and we have the this, and we have the that. Again, fancy, we dress up nice, and we go up to the conferences and make fancy speech. We fancy. But when it comes to the man on the street, there's absolutely nothing. And these people, based on what they go through, so you go through all the sexual abuse, and children respond in two ways, through their emotion and through their behavior. And so when they start to act a fool in class, they get put out, they get embarrassed, they get shout out. And so I always remember when I used to go to secondary school, Block E was the block where you're going to get weed. If you wanted weed for the first time, you wanted sex, whatever kind of sex. It was Block E. And Block E was amalgamated with people who were put out of class. So you put them out of class and you send them to Block E. Now, hear me. We are learning how to deal with difficult children in the classroom, you know. Put them out.
You put them out.
Because that's the easiest thing to do. System. Just remember the word I keep saying, it's system. And then these children have to now survive. So you have to steal to survive. You have to do odd things to survive. So you get into all manner of trade and tricks to survive. And then they end up in the system. Again, system. And a big part of my trauma work, and it's something that I find that many people don't talk about, is system-induced trauma. System-induced trauma. And when I talk about system-induced trauma, I'm talking about a school who traumatized a child because a teacher may be on this child. The child might be ill-behaved, but nobody's asking the question why. It is easy to bawl and shout and say, you see me? I have a client who told me every Monday morning, the first thing the teacher did was put him out.
Wow.
It's too early on a Monday. I don't even want you in my class. I got to no fool and I'm using kind words. So you see you better get out from now.
Wow.
He used to look forward to going to class on a Monday morning to be put out. To get his license to roam the school.
Go to Block E.
Of course. And so the system,
Yeah.
when the child now meets outside the police, lock up, slap up, rough up, and well, I'm now hearing inhumane type of abuse in Barbados from what I'm learning from my colleague there. System-induced trauma. And then you get sent to YGC, you get sent to industrial school, you get sent to, then you get abused there now. System-induced trauma. What you think that person going to produce in society? Who and what that person is going to become?
Yeah.
And we're not understanding why we are spinning top in mud. We are busy.
Creating.
But we have not moved. We are busy, but nothing is happening.
Hamster on a treadmill.
So true.
The idea of system-induced trauma is I find a difficult one, and the reason I find it a difficult one is because often when we sort of point things at systems and say the system causes that, it almost sort of removes the feels as though sometimes it removes the personal responsibility, because the system, who are the people who are responsible for the system, right? Who are the people who have some sort of administrative control over the system? Who are the people who are observing the system? Who are the people who understand the system and how it works and functions and what are its interfaces and its dependencies? How do you, even if you've identified that there are these levels of systemic impact on children that's causing trauma, how do you take that system and
Decompose it.
decompose
and reconstruct it.
and try to figure it out, and then start to actually effect change.
But that's a powerful point, and that's where my conversation always leads, because in order for us to truly change, we must first understand. And if I were to use the medical model, when you go in, you say, Lord, doctor, my chest, and you come in holding your chest, the first thing they're going to do is probably give you something to start to help if you are in fact getting a heart attack. But ain't nobody know if you're getting a heart attack, you had a bad gas pain. Right? But they are not waiting to see if it's gas or if it's your heart. They begin to do what they need to do to ensure that if it is in fact your heart, you are being treated. If it is gas, we're going to deal with it. So it means then that we have to understand in a real way what are the issues before us. Then we have to understand it from a non-political, non-religious perspective. Too many of our issues are covered up, danced up, clean up, because we don't want to look bad. The foolishness about always, listen, if we have a problem, we have a problem. We say we
with
have
those
a
in
problem.
itself, political and religious, those are systems as well.
Correct. But those systems are what keeps the Caribbean region where they are. Our children are still being forced to go to church because that is just a system. And we are still either a political party left or right because that is the system. And so rather than say we didn't get it right, we have examined and we will fix it, we use fancy language and we use color and to try to hide the fact. So what I'm saying here to solve the issue, because the systems are in place, but the people in the system are the ones who are not held accountable, who are not properly trained, right? So, or who have been appointed because of, again, power, prestige, religion, all of these things.
Yeah.
You see? And so, in order for us to really make a change in our society, we have to begin to understand what is child protection, what that system is, what are the different parts of the system that is not doing you right, and how do you link the systems together to avoid people operating in their own private areas and not coming together as a country.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you something. The school must work in tandem with the social workers, with the Ministry of Social Development, with this is a battle, this is a never-ending relay. But when one operates in a silo on the left, and never talking to the one on the right, and never talking to the one down south, then what do we have? We have a broken system.
And they have different goals and objectives that don't come together.
Thank you. And so, Andrea, if you say this is the goal of child protection,
Yes.
and this goal will be trickled down in all agencies, and the objectives now will be different based on what you are doing in that agency. But all of us have the same goal, and we understand and share the values of that goal. But we don't have that. We don't have that.
No.
But is it, what are we saying? Because even when I listened to the minister in Barbados, when he announced the 6 weeks for the investigation, and I say this in context of understanding and unpicking and deconstructing the current systems as they exist, and perhaps putting them back together, he announced the 6 weeks to say this is to show how urgent this is. You know, he was almost saying he's happy to do this within 6 weeks. You're on mute, Marcia. He's happy to do it in 6 weeks. So you just wondering.
You put me on mute.
Oh, is it me? Oh, sorry about that.
Yes, it was.
Wow. Okay.
I just want to, before we start to talk about deconstruction of the system, I want to answer the question that you put on the table about taking the personal responsibility, because I took the personal responsibility and I was fired. So let's not pretend that we live in a society that makes it easy for people to take responsibility.
Absolutely. People are fearful.
This is not America. This is not Canada, where you are actually protected for whistleblowing
and protected.
And trying to get unprotected. Right?
Protected,
so let us not, I agree that we should take personal responsibility, but then that takes another discussion altogether to make sure that people are protected, because everybody doesn't have the privilege to be able to land on their feet when they're fired.
Indeed. Right? Quick one, Marcia, before you go. Hold on a sec, Marcia. Now, Hanif, I know you're going to have to leave us soon, but before you go, because it was such an interesting discussion, and I hope we get you back sometime, and I hope you're open to coming back. But as you said, you're happy you come to this one, so I think we're going to get you back at some point. And I think you explained a little bit of it already, but the Caribbean that you see as it relates to dealing with child protection and dealing with children who's experienced the trauma of going through the system as it exists today. I wonder if before you go, you can give us your vision looking forward.
My vision, and it's something that I've been working through my company, the Center for Human Development Limited, strengthening families, building communities, developing mind. And I've worked extensively in the region, especially in that of juvenile justice. I would have been one who participated in reviewing some of the laws that is now coming to effect in relation to child and juvenile justice. But what I have found in all of the countries that I've worked in, all 7, is that the laws are beautifully written, but the system that surrounds the law is lacking. And so I think while the haste is to change the law, which is the starting point, parallel to that must also be to build a system around it in a real way. Not take 2 people from this department and 2 people from that department and call it a new department, but to really understand that child protection is something that we must invest in. Because I tell you this, we are paying. We are paying. The largest budget in Trinidad and Tobago government is the national security. And in every other country, national security takes a big chunk. We are paying. Tell me, what is the cost to house a person in either juvenile or in big jail? We are paying. And so we need to be brave enough to put children first. You hear what I said? We need to be brave enough to put children first. We have not put children first. Children are by the way. Only when there's an issue we come forward. Even in your own family, the children playing, you are taking them on until somebody cries. That's just how it is.
Wow.
That is just how it is.
True.
We are interested if they are okay. And so my vision is to continue to build through understanding trauma, helping people to understand what children go through, and helping build systems where we are able to not just say we pass a law, but put law and practice in the same vein. To say, listen, we are creating a law, but this law, in order for it to be effective, this is what we must do. Do you know how many laws are passed and cannot be operationalized? So they pass in pieces of the legislation.
Yeah.
Because you do not have the system in place to support it.
True.
Why pass the law if you do, but you see, the common man on the street don't know that. They just know a law pass.
Yeah.
You see. And so it is important for us to bring the law into practice by putting your system in place. We have to be brave enough to put children first. And that is what I've been doing, and that is what we have been doing. And Marsha, I tell you this, it is not easy when you're an advocate. It is not easy when you stand for truth, whatever that truth is. It is not easy when you are fighting for somebody who is so low on the totem pole. It will always be a battle. Whether it's in Trinidad, Barbados, Grenada, Jamaica, there will always be a battle until we are able to put children first. I thank you for the opportunity to sit with you, and I would definitely look forward to sitting with you at any point again.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you so much, Hanny, for coming and just sharing. I really appreciate it. Guys in the audience, thanks, Hanny, for dropping by.
Blessings, everybody.
Blessings, Hanny.
Thanks, Hanny.
Yeah.
One of the things that Hanif said, so let's look at the press conference, the last press conference we had with the announcement of the 6-week investigation. We had two ministers. We had the Minister of Home Affairs on one side and the Minister of Social Care on the other side. And I heard Bejan saying, oh, yes, the government is really paying attention. But when you listen to Hanif talk about the pieces and the ways in which the system is broken into these very, inefficient things that then cannot operate. Those two ministers that we saw come to the press conference is actually a manifestation of exactly what Hanif is describing. So you have the government industrial school, which is under the Ministry of Home Affairs. One of the major problems with the government industrial school right now is that it has no affiliation with the Ministry of Education.
Wow.
Right? Which is another ministry again. Serious disconnect. Serious disconnect.
Yeah.
Okay?
I was going to ask you what happens when you go into the government GIS system and what's the education connection there, but okay.
There is no education. The government industrial school is treated as a penal institution.
Yeah.
Right? And so the focus is on making sure that these children are told as many times a day what them is, how to catch doing adult things. So, this is what happens to children who behave that way. Education is not a focus. Now, that is not to say that there aren't children who can come out of the government industrial school and talk about education. Because actually education is used as like a carrot and a stick. So the better children or the children who are favored in the system get access. But there is not a plan, there is not a policy that governs how education is supposed to be done in the government industrial school. So things will happen like when a child does do a CXC, and it's usually self-guided study, the children who are bright enough to manage through and teach themselves. And
so they're not taught. There's no classroom setting or structured curriculum or anything like that?
I have never seen it. They will come and they will tell you, they will bring down everything. Yes, this happens, whatever. I can't get a child to tell me, yes, I have experienced this. It happens on a usual basis. And I have never actually seen it happen with my own two eyes in the time that I was there between 2018 and 2021.
But if you say you want to study X, are those resources then provided?
The resources are not provided. And these children are taken off of the role of the school that they belong to originally when they go into the government industrial school. So there's not even a connectivity between
back to
them
the school
in this
they were at.
And the school that they were at, because
to provide work and stuff.
Most of these are the Block E children, so the school is relieved
that
to
get
rid of them.
Get rid of them.
Okay, nobody ain't looking back. But the little child who can do some self-guided study and that kind of thing, guess what? When they get that CXC, guess what they write at the top of it? Government industrial school.
Wow.
So, like, the children will tell me, well, Marsha Kadea,
Mark
when
for
I applied
life.
for this job, when I applied for this job and I got Comamere Harrison College, Alexandra Government Industrial School. Guess who gets the job? So when
Yeah.
Hanif talks about systemic trauma,
Yeah.
right? That is exactly what has been happening in this institution. Now, this is the final piece I want to say. So the Ministry of Education, Home Affairs, no connection with respect to these children. What you saw play out at the press conference, the child protection legislation that is supposed to be tabled in Barbados will fall under the Ministry of Social Care. It will be the remit of the Child Care Board, right? We could talk about another set of problems there, but we're not going to mix up the issue right now. There is no place in Barbados for children in need of care with behavioral issues to be housed. So we have these girls living in these families where uncle is taking a piece, whoever, stepdaddy, whatever. They start to act out because they don't know how to process that trauma at 8 or 9 or 12, right? Then they come into the juvenile justice system, not because they are criminal. They haven't committed any offense. Actually, offenses have been committed against them. But they come into the juvenile justice system and they are treated in the same way that a child in conflict with the law would be treated, because there's no safe space to house them. So they end up in the government industrial school, right?
Right.
One of the issues that remains unresolved, even as the two ministers grandstand on TV about these two pieces of legislation that will be going in front of the House, whatever, the Child Care Board does not want to take responsibility for housing children in need of care with behavioral issues.
Right.
And somehow the Child Care Board in Barbados has enough power to determine, we don't want to deal with them, we're not dealing with them.
So what role are they actually playing in the existing system, the Child Care Board in Barbados? What do they do?
The Child Care Board transfers unilaterally children that they deem to be too difficult to deal with in the homes to the government industrial school.
Really?
Oh my word!
Really?
Wait. Say that again.
Through a back channel old time process called refractory behavior.
Wait. Hold on. Say that again, just so I can process it, and I ain't hear you wrong.
Incredible.
So you have a child who at 7 years old loses both parents in a car accident.
Right.
This child, by the time they become 10, has started to act out because they haven't gotten the level of care and support that they need to be able to process and deal with that trauma. This child is placed in a child care board home because, let's say, there were no other family members who had the means to be able to take the child. Okay?
Right.
By 12, when this child is fully disruptive, the child care board will start a process through the court to transfer that child from the child care board home into the government industrial school.
Wow.
Where a child like that is likely to stay until the age of 16, not because they need to be there for 6 years, because the child care board closes the door behind them, and once you go, there's no
coming back.
Wow. This is what is happening in Barbados. And as much as the ministers have come and talked to the public, like Hanif rightly said, the average man doesn't understand how the laws work. They don't understand the cleavages in the law.
The system is broken completely.
This system is broken completely. I would go as far as... Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Carry on. I'll come in after.
No, I would go as far as to say that you cannot depend on the people with the most political investment to fix it.
To fix it.
Absolutely.
Those are the issue.
Wow. So look, I want to understand the day in the life of a child that might be at the government industrial school, actually, because we picked out a little element around education, but I'm sure, if we were to hear what a day actually looks like for one of these kids, man, it could be quite disheartening. So take us through a little bit.
A day in the life in the school is one where you could get something like crackers and a piece of fried spam for breakfast. There's usually not a range of choices. So if it is biscuits, like 4 Eclipse biscuits, so like a biscuit is, Eclipse biscuit, so you get 2 of those, which will be 4 squares, right? And a piece of spam, a cup of Milo. right? You get that at 8:30.
Spam is
And
lunch and
that
meat.
is
Lunch and meat. Okay,
lunch
yeah, I
and
was
meat.
like spam.
Yeah,
Lunch and
lunch
meat.
and
Okay,
meat. Lunch
sorry.
and meat. So you get that at 8:30. And the
Right.
reason why I think that is very in itself problematic is because most children in Barbados are accustomed to be up at 6:30, to have breakfast between 6:30 and 7 o'clock, to be out the
To
door
leave
to
for
get
into
to
the
Of
school.
school
course.
at
Yep.
8:30. So you have now adjusted this child's regiment such that they will be hungry for 2 hours when they get that
Yeah.
Eclipse biscuit and spam at 8:30 in the morning. They are required to do chores, which will be things like, cleaning the bathrooms, making up their bed, so on and so forth. And then pretty much you chill out for the rest of the day. If you
That's
have
it.
court,
To your next meal.
Oh my
if
goodness.
you have court, you're taken to court at some point during the day, and
So
that's
why they
pretty
call
much
it school?
I don't know why they call it school, because in other parts of the world, those things obviously don't happen.
So good at the end of the day, I just want to square this off and see how this plays out.
So you will get lunch sometime. I think the lunch is served between 12 and 2. And then more chilling until the evening. If the staff thinks that you have been good enough or whatever, you might get to go outside and kick a little ball in the
So wait,
evening.
all this time you inside the building?
All this time you're inside of the building. Especially at the girls' unit. I find that the boys get to go outside a lot more than the girls. The boys also get to do a lot more chores, like um mowing the lawn, painting the facility. So at least they have some exposure to things that can keep their mind turning
But
over.
but
and
even
things
that thing
can
with boys,
become
is that
skills.
because there's a belief that boys got more to burn
Yes.
off?
Yes. And I actually asked about it, and I was told that the girls don't get to do it because they can't do the strenuous things that the boys can do. And I was like, what are you talking about? In 2022, when women are working in factories, engineering, welding, plumbing, what do you mean?
Yeah,
Right?
and
So the
where's the
whole thing
activity?
is just based on archaic thinking.
Yeah,
Some of the
yeah.
girls might get to sew a little bit during the day, that kind of thing. But really and truly, you teaching a child to sew in 2022 when we don't even have a garment factory on the island. Like, I mean,
And
Fair enough.
and just to continue with that, and there are some kids I understand that could be in solitary confinement or whatever that is.
yes.
And
So
I brought that
especially-
up. No, go ahead, and then I'll come to this
Yeah,
question.
Jane, have a good evening.
No, go ahead, Andre. I
No.
didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was gonna bring it up because we had a question there that Annalie had asked that I wanted to put up there to say that if we do have kids in solitary confinement, is it not a breach of the UN Convention on Protection for Children? And can a case be brought against the state for this breach?
And this is exactly what we are in the process of doing as Operation Safe Space. I feel like I've given the authorities in Barbados enough time to come with serious reforms if that is the way that they were going to take. And so we think we are at the point where we need to get the oversight and review of the international community to whom we have obligations, right?
Yes.
So that is a part of the advocacy that we're currently engaged in. The solitary confinement is the one that beat me the most. I'm sorry. So you talk about the day in the life. If you are a new ward at the school, you go into the school, you will be subjected to another set of cavity searches, and you are put in solitary confinement for a 2-week
What is this
period.
cavity? We seem to like cavity searches though. What?
We seem to really like to search the cavities of pubescent girls in Barbados. It is very, very concerning as to why we think it is so necessary, right? And there are children who will tell you up to that experience, they had never had any kind of experience in that region of their bodies before. So this is basically their first encounter,
Wow.
as it were. And if you really, I mean, like when I heard these things, I was like, nah, you.
And
That was the most uncomfortable period of my life between 2018 and 2021. Sleepless nights, just fits of crying.
and
I
you at the
could
mercy
not
if whoever examining
believe-
you had a bad day.
I could not believe that these things were still happening. So you get those second set of cavity searches and you go into solitary confinement for 2 weeks. That is supposed to be used to break you into life at the government industrial school. And it happens to both boys and girls. Both boys and girls are placed in solitary confinement for a 2 week period, right? And so when you are in solitary confinement, your day now is definitely biscuits and spam, water, if you get that. Where the cells are located in the schools, there's no human interaction. In the girls' school, they're actually in an attic. So when they close that cell door on you and then close the big door that encases those cells, that's it. You cannot hear people, you cannot talk to anybody, you also cannot call anybody to relieve yourself. So you have to relieve yourself inside the cells. Some of them have bathroom facilities and some of them do not. And when there are countless times when I've raised this to the board, countless times where I've raised it to the minister. I wrote emails to the prime minister. You don't sit on a board and start with going to the public first, right?
And kids who are kids are there for different reasons. There's some who have actually broken laws and what have you. And there are some who are there just because they behave bad in class and they fall foul. And as you say, the wandering young girls and what have you. Yeah. Are they kind of treated the same way? The solitary confinement is
Everybody.
A possibility?
One size fits
Everybody.
all. That's it.
One size fits all. Once you go into the government industrial school, you are treated as a child in conflict with the law, not a child in need of care. Okay, so there's no differentiation. Although there are 2 streams of students in the facility, there's no differentiation, right? Wow. Now, most of the crimes, the real crimes that like an adult would also be charged for if they did the same thing, most of them you will find on the boys' side of the school, to be quite honest, right? There are children in conflict with the law on the boys' side. I think there are reports that say as few as 2 girls every 10 years on the girls' side are actually in conflict with the law. The majority of the children at the government industrial school right now are charged with wandering on the girls' side. They're children in need of care. You have examples where you would have one girl charged with wandering 15 times. And why I say that is not to highlight the fact that she has wandered 15 times. Why I say that is to highlight the fact that they do not escalate. So it is not wandering and stealing. It is not wandering and public disruption or whatever. 15 charges of wandering. Never escalating, never becoming more deviant, nothing. Right? And every time she's just sent back through these revolving doors without the proper therapy, without the proper support. So it becomes what Hanif called system abuse.
I mean, I feel so hurt and embarrassed, to be honest, to hear you talk about how we are treating some of our most vulnerable young people in society. I have to ask you, Marsha, what is it that made you walk away?
I didn't walk away. I was
but
fired.
She didn't walk away. She was fired.
Let me put that another way.
Exactly.
What was the change? What was the change that you were asking for, right? That the minister decided to say,
not you.
I spoke out of turn. I spoke out of turn. I was not complicit in seeing what I had seen and being silent about it. And so I got the ultimate punishment that people again from back in slavery get when they talk out of turn or dare to say this is not quite right. And I do think that there is a way in which perhaps Barbados thought that I had gone away. I mean, I chose to stop living in Barbados last year because it was just becoming too emotionally stressful.
But I can be honest though, even in the recent issues, I see you getting some licks too in the comments because people be like, well, what you gonna do, Sam, when you today?
I want to go back
to assure everybody I tried my best. It was not for the lack of trying. I bummed on every door that I could bum on. Actually, I think the principal who was sent into retirement during my tenure on the board kind of sorta just decided, you know what? Yeah, this woman is probably not the one that I am going to be able to continue in the way that I have been doing, and he's not there anymore, right? But yeah, I the board of the government industrial school is an advisory board. So
Yeah.
again, what Hanif was saying,
No teeth.
no
No
teeth,
teeth.
no system, no
Yeah.
structure. So all I can do is
No authority.
do the inspection as the law sets out. I'm to do the inspection.
Right.
And then I go back and I tell the minister what I saw and beg the minister to act on what I saw. I have reports from inspection 1 down to, I think I did about 25 of them across the 2 schools in my span. Right? And all of them resulted in me writing some kind of report for the minister. When I decided to go public in March, I had just written a report for Minister Abrams in November that had highlighted some of the very issues that would have led to that child being kept the way she was kept in that cell. So again, I had drawn it to his attention 3 months before it had actually happened, right? The same thing. I spoke to I sent an email to the Prime Minister more than once. Please, can I meet with you to draw this to your attention? I think it is important. I sent messages through her personal assistant at the time. You know, it really wasn't for the lack of trying, but the system is deaf.
It's broken.
And there is a silence around these children and their experiences, and it is hard to penetrate.
Go, Phil. You.
I understand that. Yeah. So I want to come back to this systems talk, because when I was talking about, personal responsibility and not taking away personal responsibility when we talk about systems, I wasn't actually talking about people who work in the system or even governments and so on. I was talking about us as society. And Mark talked about feeling that sense of shame, and I share that as well, because growing up in Barbados, there's a certain stigma that we would have thrown on people who went into DODS, right? I went to the government industrial school, and
not even so far, even just children's homes or something.
Children's homes and so on, yeah, because that was our understanding of a differentiation between who we were and who they were, the sort of them and us sort of situation.
Yeah.
And also earlier you talked about leaning on national conscience as your only way of getting some change happening. And I think this does come back to that sense of systems ownership and systems responsibility. And if there isn't any urgency or this conviction that there's something wrong with the system, even that leaning on national conscience isn't going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Right? And if there isn't that sense of responsibility as well, and outrage at what's happening, there's probably still not going to be a change. So it feels as though there really needs to be this national conscience that's just outraged at this situation, but also sees this as our these are children that we are creating.
But how do we get it raised there though, Phil? Because that's usually the issue, right? People still seeing this as you said, the societal system, but as a society we see the system of the juvenile penal justice as outside of me, because I am here in my wall house and my 2 children at Commonmere and 1 at QC. Let me try Alexandra in there, because we are there too. Alexandra, I have you. And so that's not me. That is them, and there clearly is an issue over there for which my tax dollars pay to help, so somebody should be fixing it if it need help. But don't put it in my space, really and truly, because I got things to do.
It's a complex thing. Right?
I know, so it's just how we get it out there.
Yeah. I feel as though, go on, Marcia, because you might have a much better answer than me, I'm sure.
I think it is the way in which there are some people in our society that are dispensable. Like Hanif said, poor people in the Caribbean. I come along, I hear my granny say, when you're poor, you're a dog, basically, right? And so there is a way in which when we hear about these children being quote unquote behaviorally different, because I'm not going to use the word deviant. When we hear about them being behaviorally different,
I like that. Yeah.
we automatically judge where they live, who they live with. You know, it's a whole
The
there's
lifestyle.
A whole said,
What they're capable
it's
of.
separation of my child can never be like that, you know, and because that builds up power and a sense of prestige in us, we almost need these children to remain in the position that they are so that we can
Gosh,
remain in
yeah.
the position that we
Live
are in.
comfortably and without issue.
Exactly. Right. And so, you know, for me, it was the reverse. I had children at the time that I was on the board in the age range of the children that I was seeing. And it is almost like when I saw these girls, I would see my daughter's face and I was like, nobody could not do this to my girl child. Manda Sunda, I don't care what she did. So then it became, and this is perhaps what you were talking about, Philip, I became personally offended.
Yes.
I wasn't offended
That's it.
because I was deputy chair or anything. I was offended as a mother who had a daughter that I was very clear would never go through what these children were going through. Same thing on the boys' side, right? And so there is a way, you know, the interesting thing is I have seen judges in Barbados who spoke about the wandering laws and the problematic nature of the wandering laws 20 and 30 years ago. They are now in positions of power to change these laws, to deal with this system, to lean against it, and they do nothing. I have seen advocate, you name it, a whole host of people who have talked about wandering, but it still continues to be on the books of Barbados because the people that it affects the most are seen as the most dispensable people in our society.
People
I go put in this one. Sorry.
Go.
You're in the living room, put it in.
Go.
Apologize.
I see people who have the platform of national radio who understand how damaging archaic laws are when they threaten their lifestyle.
Well, I feel I know this. I won't call
When it comes to how archaic laws threaten the life and well-being of poor girls in Barbados.
Interesting point.
This individual says, but what we gonna do? We can't do nothing. We gonna left them there.
But we can do something else over here, though.
We could do.
Do something else over here.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I hear that too.
This individual knows full well from their experiences of living far and wide
Of course.
that the world is not just putting them in lockup anymore. And that the world has changed the standard completely such that many of these children are actually being rehabilitated and then coming into society as productive citizens. Them things that's got me good. Like I can't deal with that level of hypocrisy.
But you see, it's a real shame, Marsha, that we don't recognize. We can ignore it, but it is still going to be there facing us in different forms, and we are still going to pay for it. You know,
you know that a study was done a couple of years ago that says that many of the children who are in the government industrial school now are third and fourth generation government industrial school children.
People, it's a cycle.
Yeah.
So if you really think about that, if you think about that and you think, like Hanif said, about the amount of tax dollar that it takes us to just cycle through those generations, why not just fix it?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I always find it interesting when we go, because we talked about soft skills and hard skills. Quite often when it comes to fixing a problem, the only way we can get people to sort of react to it is when we bring in the financial cost of it. And that actually affects me a lot. I find that, like, gosh, what is wrong with us as people? And it's not just talking about the Caribbean, it's me talking about humanity, when the only thing that stirs us is when we can argue about it from an economic perspective and not from a sheer, fundamentally human perspective.
That's shared values and the decency and stuff. You know, we just see.
But that is also a relic of slavery.
It is,
because we were not people; we were units of production.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. So
we got a few.
I was going to say something else, but I'll hold that one back.
We got a few questions here, Marsha. So I think people have been looking forward to have you on a forum like this. We got to bring you on here more often. Whoever they're doing in Barbados, they got you restricted, man. People people want to hear you talk. So here's one here from Heather. Like, who's the advocate for girls at the GIS? Do they have one? Social workers assigned?
There are social workers that operate inside the government industrial school. So they are inside of the system that is badly broken. And I have said on many occasions how I feel about those social workers because I am clear that they could not operate as social workers anywhere else in the world. They'd be facing charges. Okay. So yes, the staff of the school has social workers. However, the children at the government industrial school do not have an independent advocate. So there is not any independent advocate who comes into the institution to interface directly with the children to ensure
that
accountability and again to monitor the standards.
Now, is that a break in the structure or someone not adhering to how the structure should work?
So the government industrial school doesn't really have a structure. Let's be frank. This school was opened in 1872. The principal is the one that controls every aspect of the school. The UN convention.
Principal, or you sound like a warden to me.
Well, okay then, right?
So what is the structure? What is the structure below the principal? Is there any?
So there is a principal and a vice principal. There are social workers on staff. And there are these things called instructors, which are supposed to be like people who teach various skills to the children and that type of thing. But there is no external oversight. The advisory board is an advisory board. There is no mechanism for like inspections. The government industrial school has never attracted the attention of the
Auditor General.
Mr. Lay, the Auditor General. Thank you. It has never made a financial, there are no financial reports. That is not a requirement. The government industrial school receives thousands, if not millions of dollars in donations from the business community in Barbados.
Unbelievable.
Both in kind and in financially. There is no charity that is set up associated with that.
No,
so the principal is the only one that knows what they receive. And there are also the ones who are responsible. Exactly. Like all of these things, when people hear me talk about the treatment of the children, that's not the only thing that I raise.
Wow.
The children within the government industrial school do not have proper personal records. Okay? So the all points bulletin that we put out for one of those girls, which is illegal. Children in conflict with the law are not supposed to have open records. So it boggles my mind how we put out public all points bulletin for these children, replete with pictures and everything. Not supposed to happen, right? But one of the children.
But the people that do it don't know that it ain't supposed to happen. Cause it sounds like we got people that ain't.
The people that do it is the police. You trying to tell me that the police in Barbados don't know
moving along
what the laws of children in conflict with the law?
This is true.
What it says. I mean,
but I assume they did it. I agree, but I assume they did it at the behest of the people at the GIS. I presume.
Okay.
So that
if you have a principal of an institution like that who does not know how to create an all point bulletin in line with international standards, then
the job in the first place.
We got a problem.
You realize the problem.
Exactly.
But what I wanted to say is that one of those all point bulletins had the listing of one of those children as 16. The child is 13. And all of that comes from the fact that there is no record keeping of these children.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. When you talk about a system that is completely astray, I realize that the rhetoric now is, well, if you shut the school, we're gonna put them. She's so stupid to say that, this and that. When I say shut the school, I am not saying that the school doesn't have to be replaced by something
else. Yes.
But what closing, like Hanif said, there are some cases where the systematic abuse gets so bad that you cannot rehabilitate. You cannot treat it as like a surgeon would go in and just cut out a piece. You know, sometimes they can go in and they can cut out a piece, and other times they gotta cut off the whole leg.
Yeah.
Well, the government industrial school has served its purpose. We are not in 18 anything anymore. We have to shut it down. We have to shut it. But when we shut it, it is not that we're going to shut it and then send home all the children, as I heard somebody say. What we have to do is create 2 new entities. Okay? And don't follow me. When I say create 2 new entities, I'm not talking about buildings.
Yeah.
I'm actually more talking about what Hanif is talking about, a system. Because I do not believe that children in need of care in Barbados need to be housed anywhere. Right? Or that where they're housed should be an institution. I believe that it actually needs a set of floating social workers, psychologists, where these children are kept as much as possible in normal society.
In society. Absolutely.
Right? And then you treat to their issues. Lock up the men that troubling them so that they can go back home. Right? Because the reason why a lot of them can't go back home, as I hear the public say, is not because they don't have home space, but because the home space is unsafe.
It's unsafe. Yeah.
Right? Children in conflict with the law, you will need a center for that, but we do have the boys facility that is pretty up to date, has a camera system, by the way. Girls
working
don't,
cameras,
boys do. Working cameras, fully functional. I can stand up at one point of the control room in the school and I can see all points that I'm supposed to be able to see. So we have to ask the question, why does that exist at the boys section of the school, but at the girls section of the school it was dark. Dark. Right?
Yes,
These are the things that made my mind go, what am I in? Like
you may gotta wait for the report to tell you why it was dark. Or you might understand why it was dark if the report come out.
That'll be redacted.
I know why it was dark. I'm very clear about why it was dark, right? So so when we close the school, we are then freeing up that resource. You have a school right now that is open with a full complement of staff, and there are 2 children. Because there's 7 on the roll right now and 5 are at the psychiatric hospital receiving treatment. So full staff for 2 children that are in the institution. It won't shut in. Shut it.
So tell me, say that again. Give me that statistic again. 5 at the psychiatric hospital.
5 are at the psychiatric hospital receiving treatment out of 7.
And the other 2.
Well, if there's one who has again run for her life, and that is, reasonable in my view. So 4 are at the psychiatric hospital, 2 on the inside, full complement of staff. Nobody has been laid off,
But that is a high percentage of girls needing psychiatric help.
But if you
in-house, because you might go to traumatists and stuff, but to be in-house at a psychiatric facility, that is nearly 70-80% of the wards that need this, which is another line of investigation that needs to be looked at as well.
And I'm not going to lie. There is a relationship between children being behaviorally different and mental wellness and illness.
But I understand therapy and stuff, but to be actually housed and put into a mental institution, that's next level.
But this is what I'm saying now. Although there is that correlation, there is a far stronger correlation between how the children are actually treated when they go to the government industrial school and what that treatment results in them needing.
That's the point.
That's the point.
That's the point. That's where I'm going. Exactly. We on the same wavelength.
There is a way in which the public in Barbados kind of talks about these things and conflates a lot of it, right? And this is why I keep talking in fora like this, because I think it is important for people to understand, and the only way you can understand is to give people the knowledge that they need, right? But we also do not have enough of a mechanism in Barbados to treat to children who have mental wellness and illness issues. And so we also treat that as whatless children that need to be locked up and put away and that type of thing.
This is
go
ahead, Mark.
Let me ask you this last one here, because Annalie Davis puts it in this way. The state needs to be humiliated internationally. Barbados has quite a huge reputation around the world,
positive representation
And a very
at this
good
point in
one.
time.
This issue is just bubbling away beneath the surface. People are not talking about it, but look, we're here in the living room and we think this is worthy of a conversation, and we got to lift the lid on it. What do you think this is, or how do you think this is going to play out when it eventually starts to spill out? Because it will start to bleed out eventually. This isn't something that we can, shut away like we think we can.
Well, I am now committed. You have to be in 22 years of strategizing around the issues of women and girls in Barbados. You learn by fire, right? And when the minister came out last year and said he was launching an investigation into the child, whatever, he shut me down completely. Because there's a way in which the Bajan public will not tolerate you going outside or alongside the minister if he's doing an investigation. If the man doing something,
Wait and see what's gonna happen. Boy, we in Barbados especially is the wait and see people, boy. Wait and see.
Now, when the minister came out and said then that his investigation said nothing, like that his investigation found nothing, I was like, oh, like what? Because at that point now, you blow it wide back open. Because even the public were saying, how you mean you ain't find nothing?
Same going on.
I know about a little girl that lived 2 doors down the road that so and so happened. I know about a little boy that so and so and so. So the public was the one that said that is not the answer.
That can't be right.
And now there is the space for us in the advocacy space to do what exactly Annalie is saying, to use international mechanisms. Now the other thing is you just can't get up and run to the international court and say, come and look at what Barbados is doing. You have to exhaust the entire judicial system
High
in
court
Barbados.
and all that kind of stuff.
So the judgment that you saw, we put in a case to rehouse the 2 girls that had just run after alleging various types of abuse at the government industrial school. The court basically came back to us and told us we cannot be concerned with the welfare of these 2 girls because they are criminal. And once they are criminal, we are going to protect the society from them more than their interests as children. Now, the difficulty with that line of argument is that none of the 2 of these children is charged with anything criminal. Both are charged with laundering. Let's be clear about that, right? But we had to put in that case, not because we expected, sadly, that the judiciary of Barbados would do the right thing. But we had to actually put in that case so that when we go to the next step at the international community, we can show systematically this is what happened. We also have to go through the
you got to go through the process.
Right? So then once we exhaust all of those, now we can go to the international community. And like I said, that is the line of advocacy that we are taking.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it is interesting, I mean, Marsha, thank you so much for joining us today. This was such an interesting conversation to have yourself and Hanif and I'm sure if we had gotten the guys from Jamaica and the OECS to come in, we probably would be hearing the exact same conversation, and with certain variations in each jurisdiction, but just as horrifying and eye-opening to the public. I still think in everything we listen to, and we talked about policy, we talk about laws and what have you, it's coming back to what Philip was saying earlier. It's still about making the public
is important.
The attitudes of the public change for any laws and policies and the enforcements thereof to mean anything to people. And I just, again, not thinking about it, because maybe I was there too, in just not even thinking about this kind of stuff, just to be completely honest and transparent. But how do we get the attitudes to change? That's the thing I mean.
That's always a hard one.
The laws and everything, because forget laws and policies and stuff. Your attitude gotta be really, really gone to allow certain things to happen to children. I don't need no protocol, no policy, no law, no judge or lawyer to treat someone with dignity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And that's the real issue.
And I think as well, the public of Barbados has to know that Minister Abrams, the one good thing about that archaic act is that Minister Abrams is himself a god within the act. He can strike down any sentence of any child. He can remove any child from the school at any time. He is all powerful when it comes to the school, right? But why would he be driven to do anything? He just won his seat back. So we had government industrial school last year. We had an election this year, and the public of Barbados has generally said to this party, "We happy, but what y'all doing? So continue doing it."
Clean up
Right?
your shite off the road, so everything else we good with.
Exactly. He's a boss man, you know. We have to change as people in Barbados. Our politicians are not going to change because, like I said, they're not going to check the power that gives them power, right? So we have to change. And I'm proud. As much licks as I get in the public is not as much as I got last year or even of previous years with other issues of women and girls. So I'm actually very proud of the public and the way that the public discourse broadly is going. And we need the pressure and the continued eyes of the public. Minister Wilfred cannot be given any more time. We don't need time now. We need the school to be closed and for those children to be safely rehoused.
I agree, and pressure is the right phrase because I don't think we're that good at giving the pressure that is needed, unless it's coming from a political sphere or being spearheaded by a political organization. You know, if it don't bother me, it don't bother me. You know, and we kind of just sweep it out there. But to a point that we made, and we've been at this for over 2 hours, so sorry guys, but I think it was worth exploring some of the topics that we had with Marsha and with Hanif as well in Trinidad. But I just find it really interesting, and I'm one of those that don't believe a prime minister should be speaking on every single thing. But if you set the precedent of speaking on every single thing, then what you don't speak on actually says quite a lot.
Quite a lot. Quite a lot.
Well, look,
Absolutely.
Marsha, I want to just personally thank you, actually, because I think we need more people like you in our country. We need people who are going
Agreed.
to be courageous, who are going to see things that need fixing and be patient and just keep chipping away at it. So I just want to say a huge thank you because, you know, we might not see the value sometimes, but we can see the passion of what you're doing and we know it valuable and it will make a difference. So keep going. Keep going because this is fabulous work you're doing. It hurt my heart a lot this evening to hear some of the things that you were saying because I love Barbados. And you know, we gotta love our country with the good and the bad, but some of the bad, it just seems as though we're content to live with and we shouldn't be. So thank
I
you
always
so
say
much.
two things can be true. You can love it and also critique it when you need to. Two things can be true.
I think a part of taking the personal responsibility that Philip is talking about as well is to stop finding ways to separate ourselves and to be very honest and frank about who we are. I experienced sexual abuse as a child, and I showed up in my life like many of these children show up. The anger, all of it. And I did not go to the government industrial school just because I was from the middle class. And it would have caused my family more shame to put me there than to hide up all of what was happening. And so that is why I do it, because when I see these girls, when I see these boys, I see myself, I know myself, and that is no shame, right? Minister Hinkson actually said that if he had known that I had experienced sexual violence in my childhood, he would have never put me on the board because I'm too close to it. But thankfully, because I was so close to it, I understand these children, and I know that they are not evil.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, man.
I agree.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marsha. And you can see the guys in the chat as well are really thank you for your service and and your selflessness as well for what you're putting into this. And I think it needs to continue, and you can guarantee that whatever support you need, you got a friend in V Global, and you got a friend in the living room for when we need to shed light on these things right across the region. And we'll do our part to help you with that as well, because I think this is one that we need to stick with. We need to stick with this, not just Barbados, but stick with Trinidad too, and right across the region. Because as I said, I think if we had brought in another 4 or 5 guests from right across the region, we'll probably be hearing very similar stories right across. So we definitely got to do that, most definitely. So Marcia, thank you so much for joining us here in your living room. It's been a tough conversation, but one that needed to happen. So thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
See you again. See you again.
Bye-bye.
Wow. Quite a upsetting conversation, actually.
It is,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
I feel as though we, Marsha's opened up so many painful aspects of what's happening with young people in Barbados, a broken system, a government that doesn't seem to quite understand, people who aren't trained in the task that they're supposed to be delivering, systems that are no longer relevant. I mean, oh my word, you can go down the line completely, but it's so hurtful.
Yeah. It was upsetting, but there was
Yeah.
things that came out of that conversation were some very specific things that we can start to prod at and nudge that need to change. Very clear things there that need to change, including the ministers, as people are calling out there.
Them need to change.
Yeah,
But
but
I think I put somewhere on the internet when the current minister looking at this, she called it Minister Abrams. He should be on Netflix as a joke because he's definitely a joke as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
but
were saying, Phil? Sorry.
go ahead, Phil.
No, I was finished. It was just that there are very clear things there that need to change. How we go about changing them, that is the task. But that's where I think we really need to call on society for everyone to stop the them and us, but actually seeing them in us as opposed to them and us. But really looking at how
They
how
are
do we,
us.
they are us. We've created and we allow that system to go on. Something that stood out there is Marsha just said that the government industrial school was created in 1872.
1872, yeah.
That's less than 10 years after slavery was abolished. So you start to see there's a purpose. There was a purpose for that system being created, and it still continues to exist. So that itself is an eye opener, because a lot of our issues, our problems, are even if within families, the way we are in families with children and at school as well. What we've been through at school in terms of the way we were punished and so on. A lot of it does hang on to that sort of system of inheriting that system as the way. And it's how do you reprogram a society to change? And maybe it's something we're not going to see in our
Well, we won't.
generation.
And
We won't.
we won't. And that's the challenge with Minister Abrams, because you can't set out to tackle a complex problem in a short space of time. It will take generations to fix this issue. But what you got to do is start to talk
gotta
and
start.
help people to understand
Yeah.
the issue as it stands now, right?
Yeah.
And then start to settle on your journey. It feels to me as though this is so aggravating to the government that they want it fixed quick. Put
So they can
something
get
in place
on with
quick.
more important things.
This ain't no quick fix. You ain't fixing this quick. This is going to
Because in 6 weeks, because that was the thing when I listened to that particular press conference, is that the guy tried to speak as if 6 weeks was a good thing because we need no more than this because this is an urgent thing. We can solve this. No, dude, this is a systemic issue. You ain't gonna get to nothing in 6 weeks.
No.
You ain't gonna get to nothing. You can barely be getting some superficial recommendations that might seemingly do something, but eventually this can go under the carpet. But in my opinion, I think the guy is way out of his depth on this particular issue. And I don't know who in the civil service is supporting him to help him, because I think the guy's out of his depth completely.
So even though things take a long time to change, I still think it's really important to define what change looks like. And so hopefully within those 6 weeks, you can start to characterize this is what a refresh of this system should look like. And then the next stage is, now let's create an urgency to start that journey towards what that system should look like.
I hear you,
Right,
but
and put the measures in place to see, are we progressing towards that change?
But you also got to get to the system you have at the moment.
Yeah,
how you
exactly.
how you get here. and what's broken.
Exactly.
And
But if you
really
define,
was broken.
if you define your new system, you look at this is the system to be, as we would say in the art and craft, decommissioned. This is a system that needs to be decommissioned at the same time that we're phasing in this new system. So
Hey, these men have no clue what the new system should look like, man. They need more than 6 weeks to look at that. I'm telling you.
I know, but they have to start. They have to
No,
start.
I agree. You got to
And
start.
as you said, there's no quick fix.
Yeah.
But there are some immediate things that you can see are wrong, right?
Yeah.
In 2 hours, we saw a lot,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So
I saw
imagine
more than I
having
thought I was going to see, to be honest.
imagine having that conversation with the right set of skills for 6 weeks, right? The right set of analysts, the right set of social scientists. You know, imagine having that conversation because it's urgent over that period of time. You will get there.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, it's just...
I hold out hope.
But
I hold out hope.
yeah, me too. But it tells me how far you have to go when you have someone whose lived experience is very similar to the people you're trying to help, and your response to that person is to say,
should be
because of
hearing
your
the
lived
first
experience, you too close. But someone who live in the heights and terraces know best. Because they haven't gone
they're
through
not
this
gonna have
experience.
they're not going to have an emotional connection to it. So therefore, we can rely on their reason and their logic in their head.
Look,
That's
there's
where we
plenty, there's plenty best practice out there that we can look at that have gone
Indeed.
through these type of issues before. We just need to go
That's
and
also
find
true. Yeah.
them. Okay.
Very true. Well, look, guys, thank you for staying with us for the best part of 2 hours and 22 minutes. Usually I would say it's been a pleasure. It has been a pleasure having the conversation with you guys. It was a hard conversation to have, but one that we needed to have, and one that we at We Global and in the living room, we're going to continue in the future as well, because I think is one that we definitely need to. As I always ask every Sunday, hit share if you can, tag a few friends, let them hear the conversation that we had. If you haven't already, follow us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, LinkedIn, as well, on Instagram. We're there, We Global, West Indians Global, and be part of the Caribbean conversations. We have them every Sunday. Look, thank you guys for sticking with us. Until next time.